At the end of the Great Ice Age, Lake Bonneville formed in the Great Basin. The lake receded, leaving several habitable valleys behind, one of them being Utah Valley, probably the choicest valley for human habitation in the whole Great Basin. And one of the things that made it the area that was most favorable to habitation was Utah Lake. Utah Lake provided fish, it provided a place for wildlife, there were berries, there were pine nuts near at hand, the mountains provided wild game, and it was just an area that beckoned for man to arrive.
From the earliest Archaic period to the Paleo, Fremont, and Ute Indian bands, her tributaries and surrounding land have provided food and shelter for birds, animals, and humans alike. Spanish explorers, fur trappers and traders, and Mormon pioneers have also been her beneficiaries. Each thrived off the ecosystem of the lake, and all were connected by it. Utah Lake literally nourished the growth of Utah.
Ancestors of the Ute were the people who were here when Escalante arrived in 1776. He climbed a hill at the mouth of Spanish Fork Canyon, looked down into the valley, and saw a resource that he marveled over. 50 years after Escalante arrived, fur trappers began arriving in Utah in quest of beaver peltry. And a guy named Daniel Potts came through in 1827. He left the best description of Utah Valley. He found the valley dissected by transparent streams. He found the Indians camped in what he called houses that looked like muskrat huts because they lived away from the timber, and so they made their houses of bulrushes from Utah Lake, and they lived primarily on fish.
Our route today lay along the border of Utah Lake. The scenery around was magnificent. The wide-capped peaks only rivaled in purity by the clouds overhanging them. I have read of Lakes Como and Lehman, but think they cannot surpass the romance nature has spread around this beautiful sheet.
Joseph P. Hamelin, November 7th, 1849.
John C. Fremont was a government trapper who came through Utah in 1845. He wrote a report when he returned to Washington, and in that report he touted the virtues of Utah Valley. He said it was a great area for stock raising. It was an area where you could raise grain, and the Mormon pioneers read what he wrote about the Great Basin. And so when they were looking for a place to call their home and read Fremont's reports, they were impressed with what they saw, and I guess they were probably impressed most by the fact that nobody else was here except the Native American tribes, and they wanted someplace where they could be off by themselves. Jim Bridger met them in Wyoming near the Big Sandy River and talked to them about the Great Basin. In his opinion, Utah Valley was the place to go. But there was one drawback, and that was the Ute Indians inhabited Utah Valley, and they were very tenacious about their land, their fish, and their game. So he advised Brigham Young to stay clear of them for a while. So when the Mormons came into the valley, instead of turning and going south down toward Utah Lake, they turned north and went up toward the Great Salt Lake to form their initial settlement.